So I'm expecting the number only to go up. And there are now several, not large numbers, but several cases where we cannot see where this has come from in terms of a clear transmission, either because someone has come directly from overseas or because they've had a close contact with someone who's recently returned from overseas. I think we should work on the assumption it is here at very low levels at this point in time, but that I think should be the working assumption on which we go forward from this point onwards. We moved from a situation where we were mainly in contain with some delay built in to we're now basically mainly delay, but we're maintaining some of the elements.
So we're mainly in the second stage?
Mainly in the second stage at this point in time, and there are several things that flow from that which might be worth discussing. There are now at least 3 major outbreaks in other areas. There's one in South Korea. There's a second large outbreak, and I think larger than is currently seen in the official figures in Iran, and there is a large outbreak in Italy. And the original plan was very much predicated on the idea of if it could be controlled in China and contained everywhere else, this virus might go away. I think the chances of that happening are now very slim. So I think it's slim to zero. So I think that's my first general point about the epidemiology. Now, of course, the UK has very close links with Europe and close links with all the other areas. All viral infections that have got a very strong force of transmission and that are airborne have the capacity to travel worldwide once they've got started. The UK will not be immune to that, and I don't think anyone sensible expects that it will be. Most of these viruses don't survive on hands terribly long, so if you happen to see someone cough straight into their hand, put their hand out to you. Maybe I would encourage you, whether or not there was coronavirus, to avoid taking that particular hand. But if for social reasons you felt you had to, the key thing, it doesn't get in through the skin. So the key thing is if someone washes their hands between that time and when they then touch their face, it is unlikely that transmission will occur. So washing hands is actually really the key. There may be a seasonal element to this infection, meaning that if you move into spring and summer, the natural rate of transmission may go down, not to the point necessarily of going away, but this is a respiratory virus, and therefore it's like flu, it's like colds and coughs, and all of these tend to be easier to transmit in the winter months. Now, we do not know that, but that is a possibility. We are intending to provide geographical information. In fact, in the medium term, we will provide a lot more information with maps and other things with a proper dashboard. Some of the people who've had the infection, or some people who people think might have the infection, have had a lot of social problems and vilification in social media, and even occasionally in more mainstream media. And we are absolutely, I am as a doctor, am very against giving any patient identifiable information, and I think for this reason we should also be careful. So I'm not in favour of going down to street level or within 100 metres of a coronavirus. I think that is the wrong approach for this country.
Is there any reason why you would expect a higher proportion of the population to get the virus in the UK than in Hubei province? Or is 20% the most likely upper end projection?
Well, I think that the caution I would have is that remembering that the Chinese state and people are still doing some pretty extraordinary things, and therefore we may not have reached the end of this particular outbreak in Hubei. It may be when they stop doing those, the percentage will go up again. So I think we need to be careful. But the straight answer to a question is I see no reason why, in theory, the UK would go higher than China would. But, third caveat, if you're doing reasonable worst case scenario planning, and of course you know this having been Secretary of State for Health and Foreign Secretary and many other senior roles in government, you always start off with the highest rate number that could possibly be plausible for planning, because you don't want to be surprised, and then as you get more information the numbers gradually come down. And the highest number for any new virus which has come out of essentially nowhere to infect humans, is going to be about 80%, because after that it runs out of people. Because every time it gets an infection, they're surrounded by people who are immune. So we would always put 80% as our kind of starting point. And then if it turns out that, in fact, it's not so much that 80% may not get infected, but it may be that of those, 70% of the 80% actually get it without any symptoms at all. But at this point, we don't know, and therefore, for that reason, we're doing a more, in a sense, a more conservative planning assumption.